A hooded figure pushes open the door of a forgotten bar in Los Angeles. The owner has no idea who just walked in, but what's about to happen in the next few minutes will change his life forever. This is the true story of how a rock legend paid a debt no one expected. Stay until the end, because the final twist of this story will leave you speechless. Tuesday afternoon, downtown Los Angeles. A man walks down Sunset Boulevard with his hood up, dark glasses, scarf covering his face. Nobody looks twice. He's just another passerby in a city that's seen it all. He passes by new establishments, hipster cafes, vintage clothing stores. Everything is changing in this neighborhood. Everything except one place. He stops in front of a peeling red door. The neon sign says, Murphy's, but two letters have been burnt out for years. This place looks like it's from another era, and in a way, it is. The man observes the facade in silence. His hands tremble slightly. After 40 years, he's back. But he doesn't know if this is a good idea. He doesn't know if he should be here. He takes a deep breath and pushes the door. The sound of the rusty bell greets him like an old friend. Inside, the bar smells of old wood, stale beer, and memories no one has cleaned. The lights are dim, the windows are covered in dust. Black and white photos of bands nobody remembers hang on the walls. There are 3 people inside. A Vietnam veteran named Jimmy sitting at his usual table, staring fixedly at his glass of beer as if it contained answers that will never come. He's been coming here for 20 years, same seat, same beer, same empty expression. A middle-aged woman named Rosa, sitting alone in the corner. She was a waitress at this place for 2 decades until her knees said enough. Now she just comes to remember when the bar was full of life and music. And behind the bar, cleaning the same glass he's been cleaning for decades, stands Frank Murphy. 62 years old, rough hands full of scars from a lifetime of work, face marked by time and too many disappointments. Hunched posture of someone who's carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. This bar is all he has, and he's losing it. Frank looks up when the stranger enters. He says nothing, just nods briefly. Another customer, another same day, another glass to clean. The man walks slowly toward the bar. Each step makes the wooden floor creak. That sound feels familiar, as if his feet remember this place even though his mind tries to forget it. He sits on a stool, the same stool where he sat 40 years ago waiting for his turn to go on stage. He lowers his hood but keeps his dark glasses on. He's not ready to be recognized yet. A whiskey, hoarse voice, worn out, as if he'd screamed for 1,000 nights and now only an echo remained. Frank pours the drink without asking questions. At Murphy's, you don't ask, you serve and you listen. He slides it across the bar with the automatic movement of someone who's done this millions of times. The man takes the glass, looks at it for a moment, then drinks, closes his eyes. The whiskey burns, but it's a familiar pain. Like coming home after too long. This place is still the same, the man murmurs, more to himself than to Frank. Frank looks at him sideways while cleaning another glass. Have you been here before? A long time ago. I don't remember you. The man barely smiles, a smile loaded with irony. That doesn't surprise me. I was a different person then. Hair down to my waist, 20 kilos thinner, full of rage and stupid dreams. Frank stops cleaning for a second. There are thousands of kids like that who've passed through his bar over the years. Kids with guitars and impossible dreams. Most failed. Some disappeared. None came back. You played here. It's not a question. It's a statement. Yes. When? 1985. Frank puts the glass down on the bar. 1985. The year he'd opened Murphy's. The year he still believed his bar would become something big. An important place. A breeding ground for talent. That was 40 years ago. The man gestures toward the back of the bar with his head. That stage, does it still work? Frank looks over there. The small stage raised barely half a meter from the floor. The faded red curtains, the old microphone covered in dust. Now it's full of boxes of empty bottles and broken chairs piled up. There hasn't been music here in over 15 years, Frank says with a tone mixing nostalgia and resignation. Nobody plays at places like this anymore. Kids go to clubs with LED lights and digital sound. This place is a dinosaur. I played there, the man says, 1,985. First time I went on a real stage. First time I felt I was doing something that mattered. Frank studies him more carefully now. Tries to see beyond the hood and dark glasses. Tries to remember. But there are too many blurred faces in his memory. Too many forgotten bands. Many bands played here back then, Frank says. 3, 4 a night on Fridays. Most were horrible. But I gave them a chance because everyone deserves a chance. Hollywood Rose, the man says. That's what my band was called. We played here 3 times. The third time you kicked us out because I broke a microphone during a tantrum. Frank stops completely. Hollywood Rose. The name hits something deep in his memory, like a rusty door opening after decades closed. Hollywood Rose, he repeats slowly. God, yes, you were loud. You fought with each other on stage. The singer had the temper of the devil. That was me, the man admits with a dry laugh. Frank looks at him intently now, trying to see the 19-year-old kid underneath the 60-year-old man in front of him. What happened to the band? We broke up 6 months later. Creative differences, we called it. Really, it was that we all hated everyone. But some of us kept going. We formed another band. It turned out different from what we expected. Different how? The man spins his glass on the bar. The whiskey reflects the dim lights of the bar. Let's just say we were successful. More successful than we knew how to handle. There's something in his voice, something in the way his shoulders tense. Frank has heard enough stories in this bar to know when someone is carrying too much weight. Was it worth it? Frank asks. He doesn't know why he asked this question. Maybe because he asks himself the same thing every day. The man takes time to respond. I don't know. I had everything I wanted, and I lost everything I needed. Fame, money, women, drugs, travel, awards, everything. But look where I am now, sitting on the same stool, drinking the same whiskey, wondering if I made the right choices. Frank nods. He understands that more than the stranger could imagine. Before he can respond, the bar door opens violently. The bell rings urgently. A 40-year-old man enters, gray suit that seems 2 sizes too small, loosened tie, leather briefcase. Expression of someone who's had a terrible day and it's about to get worse. It's Michael Murphy, Frank's son. Dad, he says with a tense voice. We need to talk. Now. Frank sighs deeply. He knows exactly what it's about. They've had this conversation 15 times in the last 2 months, and each time it's more desperate. Michael, it's not the time. It's never the time. Michael raises his voice. The frustration of months coming to the surface. It's never the time to talk about reality. It's never the time to accept that this is over. He approaches the bar, takes out some papers from his briefcase, and throws them on the counter. Frank doesn't even look at them. He already knows what they say. The bank called again, Michael continues. This is the last warning, Dad. If you don't pay $60,000 in the next 30 days, they're going to foreclose on the mortgage. They're going to take the bar. They're going to take everything. The silence that follows is so heavy that even Jimmy looks up from his beer. Rosa stops looking out the window. The hooded man observes the scene without moving. Frank clenches his jaw. His knuckles turn white as he grips the rag tightly. I'll find a way. How, Dad? Michael is on the verge of tears from frustration. How? You don't have customers. Look at this place. 3 people on a Tuesday afternoon. You don't generate enough to pay the electricity. You can't keep living in denial. I'm not in denial, Frank says in a low but firm voice. I'm fighting. There's a difference. No, Dad, you're clinging to something that already died. Mom's gone. This bar isn't what it was. You have to let it go. You have to sell it to that investor group that made you the offer. You can retire. You can live your last years in peace. This bar is my peace, Frank says with shining eyes. It's all I have left of your mother. It's everything I built. If I lose it, what do I have left? Michael has no answer for that. The hooded man has been listening to everything in silence. Now he speaks. His voice cuts the air like a knife. How much? Michael turns toward him, noticing him for the first time. What? How much does he owe the bank? Frank intervenes quickly. That's none of your business. Thanks for the interest, but this is a family problem. $60,000, Michael says, ignoring his father. Desperation makes him talk. Plus $12,000 in accumulated interest. 72,000 total. The man nods slowly, takes his phone out of his pocket. His fingers move quickly across the screen. He's writing something. Numbers. Banking information. This is ridiculous, Frank says. You're not going to pay a stranger's debt. The man looks up, and for the first time, there's a genuine smile on his face. You're not a stranger, Frank. You gave me my first opportunity. Now I'm returning the favor. I don't know who you are, Frank says, though something in his chest tells him that's not completely true. What name is the loan under? The man asks. Frank Murphy, commercial mortgage for Murphy's Bar. Michael responds automatically. He's still confused, still processing what's happening. The man makes a few more clicks on his phone, then puts it away in his pocket. Done. You should receive confirmation in the next few minutes. Michael looks at him like he's crazy. What? What are you talking about? Before the man can respond, Michael's phone vibrates in his pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. Consecutive notifications. Michael takes it out with trembling hands, reads the screen. His eyes widen, his mouth opens. The color disappears from his face. It can't be, he whispers. What's wrong? Frank asks with his heart racing. Michael looks up, first at his father, then at the hooded man. His voice comes out as an incredulous whisper. The bank, they just confirmed. Transfer received. The complete debt is paid. $75,000. $3,000 more than we owed. Frank feels his legs weaken. He has to lean on the bar to keep from falling. What? The sender's name. Michael swallows. His hands are shaking so much he almost drops the phone. The name is Axl Rose. The name falls like a nuclear bomb in the small bar. Axl Rose. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe to the channel. What comes next is going to blow your mind. Axl Rose. The Axl Rose. The living rock legend. The singer of Guns N' Roses. The man who filled Wembley Stadium, who sold over 100 million records, who created Sweet Child O' Mine and November Rain, who became a global cultural icon. He's sitting in his bar. Frank stares at him. His brain can't process the information. It's too much. It's impossible. No, it can't be. You. Are you? The man slowly removes his dark glasses, reveals those blue-green eyes that have been on 1,000 magazine covers, on millions of posters, in countless documentaries. Those eyes the whole world would recognize in a second. I'm the kid who broke your microphone in 1985, Axl Rose says with an ironic smile. And it seems I still owe you that microphone. Michael is completely paralyzed. He can't move, can't speak. Rosa from her table has dropped her glass and the liquid spills on the table. Even Jimmy has left his beer and is staring with his mouth open. Frank feels tears burning in his eyes. 40 years since that skinny, furious kid went on his stage. And now he's here, in front of him, having just saved his bar. Why? Is all Frank can say. Why would you do this? End 10. Axl gets up from the stool, walks slowly toward the forgotten stage at the back of the bar. His steps are deliberate. Each one seems to carry the weight of decades. He starts moving the boxes. Frank and Michael watch him, not knowing what to do. Axl moves aside the broken chairs, cleans the dust from the microphone with his hand, reveals the small stage that hasn't seen action in 15 years. This place? Axl says without turning around. His voice resonates in the silent bar. This place is where it all started for me. He turns toward Frank. His eyes are glassy. Not just Hollywood Rose, not just my career, but me, the person I became, for better and worse. He walks toward Frank, stands in front of him. I was 19 the first time I went on that stage. It was 1985. I had arrived in Los Angeles from Indiana 6 months earlier with $50 and a backpack. I slept on the floor of friends' apartments, sometimes on the street. I ate once a day if I was lucky. Frank listens without interrupting. Michael is recording everything with his phone. We formed Hollywood Rose because no other bar would let us play. We were too loud, too violent, too uncontrollable. But you? Axl points at Frank. You said yes to us. Not because we were good. We were terrible. But you gave us a space, a microphone, an opportunity. I just let bands play, Frank says with a trembling voice. It wasn't anything special. Not to you, Axl responds with intensity. But for me, it was everything. That night, when I went on that stage in front of 20 drunk people who weren't paying attention to us, I felt something I'd never felt before. I felt I was in the right place, doing the right thing, being who I was supposed to be. He runs a hand through his hair, a gesture Frank remembers from the 19-year-old kid. It wasn't successful. I broke the microphone because I got frustrated. We fought on stage. You kicked us out. You told us not to come back, and you were right. But it didn't matter, because that night changed my life. It gave me confidence. It gave me validation. It gave me the certainty that this was what I had to do. Axl looks around the bar, the peeling walls, the old photos, the smell of history. We formed Guns N' Roses a year later, and the rest, as they say, is history. We played on the biggest stages in the world, in front of millions of people. I won awards, I made money, I gained fame. I had it all. He pauses. His expression becomes darker. But I also lost a lot. Friends, relationships, health, sanity. There were nights when I wished I'd never gone on any stage. Nights when fame felt like a prison. He looks Frank directly in the eyes. But I never came back here. I never thanked you. I never told you that without that first step, without that first stage, without that first opportunity, nothing that came after would have been possible. Frank has tears running down his cheeks now. He doesn't try to stop them. You didn't have to pay my debt, he says with a broken voice. Yes, I did, Axl responds firmly, because you gave me something priceless. You gave me a place to start. You gave me the opportunity to discover who I was. Now I'm giving you the opportunity to keep doing the same for others. Michael approaches. How did you know the bar was in trouble? Axl smiles slightly. A musician friend mentioned it to me 2 weeks ago. He said the legendary Murphy's was going to close, and something inside me broke. I realized that if I let this place disappear without doing anything, I'd be letting a part of my history die. A part that matters more than all the gold and platinum records I have hanging on the walls. He turns toward the stage again. There are kids right now like me, desperate, hungry, full of talent but with no place to give them a chance. And if Murphy's closes, they lose one more place where they can try. Axl looks at Frank seriously. That's why I asked something in return. I don't want you to thank me. I don't want recognition. The only thing I want is for you to promise to keep giving opportunities to those kids. To the ones who are loud, to the ones who are chaotic, to the ones who break microphones and fight on stage. Because one of them could be the next me, or they could be better. Frank nods without hesitation. I promise. Axl extends his hand. Frank takes it. The grip is firm, honest, like a pact sealed between two men who understand what really matters. One more thing, Axl says. Does that microphone still work? Frank blinks confused. I think so. Nobody's used it in years. Perfect, Axl smiles. Because I came to finish what I started 40 years ago. What follows is something none of those present will ever forget. Axl helps Frank and Michael completely clean the stage. They move all the boxes, sweep the dust, clean the microphone. Rosa gets up from her table to help too. Even Jimmy leaves his beer to lend a hand. When the stage is ready, Axl climbs the 2 wooden steps that creak under his weight. He stands in front of the microphone, adjusts it to his height, tests it, check, check. The voice comes out with static, but it works. Good enough. There are no guitars, no drums, no giant amplifiers, no band, no lights, no special effects. There's just Axl Rose, an old microphone, and 5 people in an empty bar on a Tuesday afternoon. And he starts to sing, a cappella. Just his voice. That voice that has filled stadiums, that has sold millions of records, that's recognizable anywhere in the world. He doesn't sing Sweet Child O' Mine. He doesn't sing November Rain or Paradise City or any of his hits everyone knows. He sings something Frank doesn't recognize, something that sounds intimate, personal, maybe a new song he's never recorded, or maybe something very old he wrote when he was 19 and sleeping in the streets. It's a song about coming home, about not forgetting where you come from, about the people who helped you when you were nobody, about the debt you can never fully pay but have to try. Each note comes out loaded with emotion, with life lived, with mistakes made and lessons learned. Frank stands completely paralyzed. Tears flow freely down his wrinkled face. Michael is recording everything, but he's also crying. Rosa sobs openly with her hands over her mouth. Even Jimmy has moist eyes. When Axl finishes the song, there's a silence so profound you can hear the hum of the beer refrigerator in the corner. Nobody applauds. Not because the song wasn't incredible, but because applauding would feel insufficient, small, inadequate for what they just witnessed. Axl slowly descends from the stage, takes his hood and puts it back on, puts on his dark glasses. He's returning to anonymity. "Thank you, Frank," he says simply. "For everything." "Thank you," Frank responds. His voice is barely audible. "For remembering." Axl walks toward the door. Before leaving, he turns one last time. "Murphy's is going to be okay now. You're going to have customers again. But when they come, don't keep them just for the gossip. Keep them for the music, for the opportunities you give, for what this place really represents." "I will," Frank promises. "And Frank," Axl smiles under the hood, "get a new microphone. That one served its time." And with that, Axl Rose opens the door and disappears into the gray Los Angeles afternoon. The bell rings one last time. Frank stands in the middle of his bar, looking at the closed door, feeling he just lived through something that will change the rest of his life. Michael puts a hand on his shoulder. "Dad, did this really just happen?" Frank nods. He can't speak yet. That night, Michael posts the video on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. He uploads it everywhere. The title is simple but effective. Axl Rose returned to the bar where he played for the first time and saved the place. The next morning, the video has 2 million views. By noon, 5 million. By the end of the day, 10 million. All the media are talking about Murphy's. CNN, Rolling Stone, Billboard, TMZ. The bar that was about to close becomes the most famous place in Los Angeles overnight. By Friday of that week, there's a 2-block line outside Murphy's. People wanting to see the place where Axl Rose started, where the legend was born. Frank has to hire 3 new waiters, 2 bartenders, a cook because now he needs to serve food for all the people coming. He buys new tables, new chairs, repairs the floor, paints the walls, but most importantly, he completely cleans the stage and buys a new microphone. He puts up a huge sign that says, "Live music Fridays, 8 p.m. Local bands welcome. No auditions. Just bring your passion." The first Friday after the viral video, 5 bands show up to play. They're all young kids. Some are 19 years old. The same age Axl was when he played for the first time. They're loud. They're chaotic. They're technically imperfect. And Frank loves them all. Because now he understands something he hadn't understood in 40 years of having this bar. Murphy's isn't just a business. It's not just a place to drink beer and listen to music. It's a starting point, a launch pad, a place where dreams that don't have form yet can start to take shape. 3 months after the meeting with Axl, Frank receives a certified package. There's no sender, just his address written by hand. Inside is a professionally framed photo. It's from 1985. The quality is terrible, blurry, yellowed by time, but you can clearly see a skinny young man with hair down to his waist is on Murphy's small stage. He's gripping the microphone with both hands. His mouth is open in a scream. His expression is one of fierce determination mixed with pure fear. It's Axl Rose. At 19 years old, at his first performance, Frank turns the photo over. On the back is a handwritten note in black ink. "Frank, thank you for believing in a kid who didn't know who he was yet. We all need someone to give us that first chance. You were that someone for me. Now you're that someone for hundreds more." Never underestimate the power of giving someone a place to start, a stage to stand on, a microphone to scream into, a chance to discover who they are. The world needs more places like Murphy's, and more people like you. With eternal gratitude, Axl. Frank hangs the framed photo on the wall behind the bar, right in the center, where he can see it every day, where everyone who enters the bar can see it too. And every time a new musician enters nervously into the bar asking if they can play on Friday, Frank looks at that photo and smiles. "Of course," he always says, "everyone deserves a first time. Murphy's is still open today, stronger than ever." Every Friday night, the stage fills with kids with impossible dreams, with out-of-tune guitars, with untrained voices, with songs they wrote in their bedrooms. Some of them will fail. Some will disappear after one show and never return. Some will realize music isn't their path. But maybe, just maybe, one of them will become something extraordinary. One of them will fill stadiums. One of them will change the world with their music. And when that happens, when that kid becomes a star, maybe they'll come back 40 years later to say thank you, just like Axl Rose did. If you made it to the end of this story, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell for more stories that will leave you speechless. And tell us in the comments, did someone ever give you an opportunity that changed your life? Who was that person, and what did they do for you? Because at the end of the day, success isn't measured in records sold or stadiums filled or awards won. It's measured in the lives you touched, in the doors you opened for others, in the opportunities you created when no one else did. Legends aren't born on big stages under bright spotlights with thousands of people screaming. They're born in small, forgotten places, in half-empty bars, on stages half a meter high, with microphones that barely work, in front of 20 people who aren't paying attention. They're born when someone says, "Go ahead, get up there, show us what you've got." And that simple opportunity, that simple act of faith, changes everything. That's what Frank Murphy did for Axl Rose in 1985. And that's what Axl Rose gave back to him 40 years later. A complete cycle, a debt paid, a legacy preserved, and hundreds of possible futures kept alive in a small Los Angeles bar that refused to die. Because as long as Murphy stays open, as long as that stage keeps receiving kids with impossible dreams, magic remains possible. And that changes everything. A promise made in 1979 was about to be fulfilled 45 years later. Axl Rose had just stepped off a private jet in Lafayette, Indiana, with a black briefcase in his hand and a pending debt that had pursued him all his life. What no one knew was that this trip would forever change the way the world saw the rock legend. Mr. William Larkin was 82 years old and lived in a modest two-story house in the same neighborhood where he had taught music for 40 years. His arthritic hands could barely hold a pencil, much less play the piano he had mastered in his youth. That October afternoon, he was sitting in his favorite armchair, looking out the window as leaves slowly fell from the trees. He wasn't expecting visitors. He wasn't expecting anything really, except perhaps another quiet day of memories. The doorbell rang. Once, twice. Mr. Larkin got up with difficulty, shuffling his feet toward the front door. When he opened it, he froze. In front of him was a man in his 50s, with long hair pulled back in a ponytail, aviator sunglasses, and a nervous smile that seemed out of place on someone so famous. "Hello, Mr. Larkin," said the visitor, removing his glasses. "I don't know if you remember me. I'm Bill Bailey, though now people know me as Axl Rose." The old man blinked several times, as if trying to process a hallucination. "Bill? Billy Bailey?" His voice trembled, not from age but from pure emotion. "The same," Axl responded, extending his hand. "It's been many years." Mr. Larkin took Axl's hand with both hands, holding it as if it were something sacred. "My God, Billy. My God. Come in, please come in." They entered the house that smelled of old wood and freshly brewed coffee. The living room was full of photographs, memories of decades of teaching, diplomas and recognitions hung on one wall. On another, there were photos of students from different generations. And there, in a small gold frame, was the photo of a red-haired 11-year-old boy with a shy smile, holding a school choir trophy, Billy Bailey, before he became Axl Rose. "I never took down your photo," said Mr. Larkin, pointing to the frame. Axl approached the photo, gently touching it with his fingers. "That's because you were the only one who believed in me when no one else did." The story began in 1979. Billy Bailey was a troubled child in a chaotic family. His stepfather was violent. His home was a battlefield. School was his only refuge, and music was his only outlet. Mr. Larkin, then a 40-year-old music teacher with infinite patience, saw something in that red-haired boy with intense eyes that no one else could see. Talent, passion, but also pain. "Do you remember when I found you crying in the music room?" asked Mr. Larkin as he slowly sat down on the sofa. It was after your stepfather beat you for singing at home. Axl nodded, his jaw tight. He told me that music was for sissies, that I was never going to amount to anything. And I told you he was wrong, continued the teacher. I told you that you had something special, a voice that could break hearts or lift them. I told you that if you ever made it far, you had to use it to tell the truth. And I promised you something that day, said Axl, his voice breaking slightly. I promised that if I ever made it, I would come back and thank you properly. Mr. Larkin smiled. I never expected you to keep that promise, Billy. You've already fulfilled it many times over. You sold millions of records. You played in the biggest stadiums in the world. You made history. Axl shook his head. None of that means anything without this. He lifted the black briefcase he had brought and placed it on the coffee table between them. This is what I should have done decades ago. He opened the briefcase. Inside were two things. The first was a thick envelope. The second was a special edition Gibson Hummingbird acoustic guitar with mother-of-pearl inlays that shone like stars. Mr. Larkin, Axl began, taking out the envelope. For years I thought about how to thank you for what you did for me. Money seemed empty. A public recognition seemed insufficient. So I did something different. He opened the envelope and took out several documents. This is the deed to a foundation I established in your name, the William Larkin Foundation for Music Education. It's already funded with $5 million. Its purpose is to give free music classes to at-risk children like me. Mr. Larkin brought a trembling hand to his mouth. Billy, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet, Axl interrupted with a smile. Because there's more. He took the guitar out of the briefcase and carefully handed it to the old man. This is the guitar I wrote Sweet Child O' Mine with. The one I used in the video, the one I played at our first massive concert. I want you to have it. The teacher looked at the guitar as if it were a divine artifact. I can't accept this. It must be worth a fortune. It's worth exactly what you gave me when I needed it most, Axl responded. Hope. You gave me hope when I had none. This guitar is just a piece of wood and strings, but it represents everything I achieved because you believed in me. Tears now flowed freely down the old man's face. I always knew you were special, Billy, but I never imagined this. There's one last thing, said Axl, wiping his own eyes. Tomorrow there's a ceremony at Jefferson High School. They're going to name the auditorium in your honor, the William Larkin Auditorium. It's all arranged with the school district. Your former students will be there, other teachers, your friends. I want you to be there. Mr. Larkin was overwhelmed. I don't know if I can process all this. Take your time, Axl said softly, but know this. Everything I am, everything I achieved, began in your classroom. You didn't just teach me music. You taught me that I was worth something, that I had a voice, and that voice deserved to be heard. They sat in silence for a moment, each processing the weight of this reunion. Finally, Mr. Larkin spoke in a trembling voice. You know what's most incredible about all this, Billy? What? That you never forgot where you came from. You reached the top of the world, but you're still that kid who just wanted to be heard. Axl smiled, a genuine smile he rarely showed in public. It's because you taught me that music isn't about fame or money. It's about connection, about truth, about touching the soul of someone who needs to be touched. The teacher nodded slowly. And that's exactly what you did with millions of people. You touched them. You made them feel something real. I learned it from the best, Axl responded. That night, Axl stayed in Lafayette. They had dinner together at the teacher's house, simple food but full of warmth. They talked for hours, remembering old stories. Mr. Larkin told him about other students he'd had, some who had pursued musical careers, others who had simply found solace in music. Axl told him about the hardest moments of his career, the times he almost gave up, the internal struggles no one saw behind the makeup and stage lights. There were moments, Axl confessed at one point in the night, when success felt like a prison. Everyone wanted a piece of me. The expectations were crushing, and I started to lose sight of why I had started making music in the first place. And what made you remember? Asked the teacher. You, Axl answered without hesitation. Every time I felt lost, I remembered that conversation we had when I was 13. After the state choir competition, We came in second, and I was devastated. Do you remember what you told me? Mr. Larkin thought for a moment. I told you that where you finish doesn't matter as much as the person you become in the process. Exactly, said Axl. Those words saved me more times than you can imagine. When the ego got too big, when the pressure was too much, I came back to that phrase. It kept me humble. It kept me focused on what really mattered. The teacher smiled with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. You never know when a word is going to change a life. That's the magic and terror of being a teacher. The conversation drifted toward deeper topics. They talked about family, about pain, about redemption. Axl told the teacher about his tortured relationship with his stepfather, about how music had been his lifeline in an ocean of domestic violence. He spoke about therapies, struggles with anger, years of internal work to become a better version of himself. I spent decades angry at the world, Axl admitted. Angry at my stepfather, angry at my mother for not protecting me, angry at myself for not being able to overcome it. But I eventually understood something. Anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I had to let it go. And did you succeed? Asked Mr. Larkin. I'm working on it, Axl answered honestly. Some days are better than others, but I learned that forgiveness isn't for them. It's for me, to free myself from those chains. The teacher nodded wisely. That's growth, Billy. That's maturity. And that's something no amount of fame or money can buy. The next morning, the ceremony at Jefferson High School was emotional beyond words. The auditorium was filled with Mr. Larkin's former students, some now in their 60s, others barely entering their 30s. All had stories to tell about how that teacher had changed their lives. When it was Axl's turn to speak, he took the stage without pretensions, without the persona of the legendary rocker. He was just Billy Bailey, thanking the man who had given him a chance. Mr. Larkin, he began, his amplified voice filling the auditorium. There are people who pass through our lives and teach us lessons we forget in a week. And then there are people like you, who teach us lessons we carry for the rest of our lives. He paused, allowing his words to resonate. You taught me that having talent isn't enough. You taught me that you have to have heart, that you have to have courage, that you have to be willing to bleed a little to create something true. The audience listened in absolute silence, captivated. I come from a dark place, Axl continued. A place where children learn that love comes with fists, where hope is a luxury you can't afford, where dreaming is dangerous because dreams break easily. But this man, sitting here in the front row, told me my dreams were worthwhile. He told me my voice mattered, and when no one else did, he listened to me. Axl came down from the stage and walked to where Mr. Larkin was sitting. He knelt in front of the old man, looking him directly in the eyes. I promised you 45 years ago that I would come back. I promised that if I ever made it, I would come and say thank you. Well, here I am. Thank you, Mr. Larkin. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for believing when it was impossible. Thank you for saving me. The auditorium erupted in applause. Mr. Larkin hugged Axl, both men crying without shame, without pretensions. It was a moment of pure humanity, stripped of all the noise and distractions of the outside world. After the ceremony, Axl spent the rest of the day in Lafayette. He visited the old school where he had studied, walked through the hallways he hadn't stepped on in decades. He visited the music room where he had discovered his love of singing. Everything seemed smaller than he remembered, but the emotion was just as big. In one of the classrooms, he found a group of current students practicing for a concert. They were children of different ages, some with obvious talent, others clearly struggling. He stood in the doorway, watching silently. One of the kids, a boy about 12 years old with braces, recognized him. "Hey, you're Axl Rose," the boy shouted, making everyone else turn around. Axl smiled. "Guilty, can I come in?" The group's music teacher, a young woman who was clearly excited but trying to maintain composure, nodded vigorously. "Of course, Mr. Rose, it's an honor." Axl entered and sat in one of the classroom's plastic chairs. "What are you practicing?" "A medley of classic rock songs for the end-of-year concert," explained the teacher. "We're doing a version of Sweet Child O' Mine." Axl laughed. "That's an ambitious choice. Can I hear it?" The students, nervous but excited, played their version of the song. It wasn't perfect, not remotely close. There were off-key notes, erratic rhythms, moments of total chaos. But there was something beautiful in its imperfection. There was passion, there was effort, there was heart. When they finished, Axl applauded enthusiastically. "That was incredible, guys." "Really?" asked one of the students, clearly doubtful. "I thought we ruined it." "Not at all," Axl responded. "You know what's most important in music? It's not playing all the notes perfectly. It's feeling what you're playing. And you definitely feel that song. That's what matters." He spent the next hour working with the students, giving them advice, sharing stories, making them laugh. He told them about his own mistakes, about the times he ruined important performances, about how failure is just another form of learning. "The first time I sang in public," he told them, "I was so nervous I vomited before going on stage. And when I finally sang, I forgot half the lyrics. It was an absolute disaster. But I kept trying, and eventually I got better." The children listened with wide eyes, fascinated that even someone as famous as Axl Rose had gone through the same insecurities they had. Before leaving, Axl left something with the music teacher. It was a check for $50,000 for the school's music program. "For instruments, equipment, whatever you need," he said simply. "These kids deserve the best tools possible." That night back in Los Angeles, Axl reflected on the trip. He had fulfilled his promise. He had closed a circle that had been open for almost half a century. But more than that, he had remembered something fundamental about himself, that it had never been about fame or recognition. It had been about connection, about impact, about using his voice to say something that mattered. 2 weeks later, Mr. Larkin called Axl. "Billy," he said with an excited voice, "you have to see this." He sent him a link to a video. It was one of the school students, the kid with the braces, uploading his own original song to YouTube. In the description, the boy had written, "Thank you, Axl Rose, for reminding me that we all have a voice. This is mine." Axl watched the video 3 times, feeling a pride that was different from any award or recognition he had received in his career. This was the real legacy, not record sales or attendance records. It was this, inspiring the next generation to find their own voice. Mr. Larkin continued to be a presence in Axl's life. They talked regularly on the phone, sharing stories, updating each other on the foundation that bore his name. The William Larkin Foundation had begun to expand, opening programs in 6 different cities. Thousands of children were receiving free music classes, many of them from backgrounds similar to Axl's. A year after that reunion, Axl organized a special concert in Lafayette. It was an intimate event, only about 500 people, all proceeds going to the foundation. Mr. Larkin was seated in the front row, next to former students and community members. During the concert, Axl did something he rarely did. He spoke extensively between songs, telling stories, connecting with the audience on a deeply personal level. He talked about his childhood in Lafayette, about the demons he had faced, about the tortuous road to redemption. "Music saved my life," he said into the microphone. "But it was a teacher who showed me how to use that salvation. Mr. Larkin, this is for you." And he began to play an intimate acoustic version of Patience, a song he had written thinking about all the times his teacher had been patient with him when he was a troubled child. When he finished, the auditorium was in total silence. Then, slowly, the applause began to grow, becoming a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Mr. Larkin was crying openly, not trying to hide his tears. The following months brought more changes. The foundation continued to grow, impacting more and more lives. Axl got personally involved, visiting the programs, meeting the students, sharing his story. He discovered that these interactions filled him in a way that world tours never had. One of the program's students, a 14-year-old girl named Maria, wrote a letter that the foundation shared with Axl. In it, she described how music had given her purpose when she was on the verge of giving up, how the free classes had shown her that she had talent, that she had value, how she had begun to dream of a life beyond her violent neighborhood. "Thank you for creating this program," Maria wrote. "Thank you for believing that kids like me deserve a chance. One day I'm going to be as famous as you, and when that happens, I'm going to do the same for other kids. It's a promise." When Axl read that letter, he felt that the circle had been completed again. Maria was him 45 years ago. And now, he was Mr. Larkin. The cycle continued, generation after generation, impact after impact. In an interview several months later, Axl was asked about his legacy, what he wanted people to remember about him when he was gone. His answer was simple but profound. "I don't want to be remembered for the songs I wrote or the records I sold," he said. "I want to be remembered for the lives I touched, for the children who were able to find their voice thanks to a program we created, for keeping alive the memory of a teacher who changed my life. That's a legacy. Everything else is just noise." Mr. Larkin passed away 2 years after that reunion. He was 84 years old and passed peacefully in his sleep. At his funeral, Axl gave the eulogy. He didn't speak as Axl Rose, the rock star. He spoke as Billy Bailey, the grateful student. "This man saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself," he said before hundreds of people who had been touched by the teacher. "He gave me hope when I had none. He gave me a voice when I was silent. He gave me a future when I only saw darkness." His voice broke. "And now it's my turn to do the same for others, because that's what he would have wanted. Not monuments or recognitions. He wanted us to carry forward with his mission, to give children the opportunity to discover the magic of music." After the funeral, Axl announced that he would double the foundation's funding, $10 million more to expand the programs. New centers in cities across the country, full scholarships for talented students who wanted to study music in college. "Mr. Larkin gave me everything," he explained in the announcement. "Now it's my turn to give that gift back, not just to one person, but to thousands." The years passed. The William Larkin Foundation became one of the most important music education organizations in the country. Thousands of students graduated from its programs, many of them pursuing musical careers, others simply carrying a love of music in their hearts. Axl never stopped being involved. Despite his busy schedule, he always found time to visit the programs, talk with students, share his story. He became a father figure to many of the children who went through the program, especially those who, like him, came from broken homes. One night, after a visit to one of the centers in Detroit, Axl received a message from one of the students he had met years ago. It was Maria, the girl who had written that moving letter. She was now 21 years old and had just signed her first record deal. "I kept my promise," she wrote. "I'm on my way, and when I get there, I'm going to do exactly what you did. I'm going to help other kids find their voice." The cycle continues. Axl smiled as he read the message. The circle hadn't closed. It had expanded, it had multiplied, and it would continue to do so generation after generation, impacting lives in ways he could never fully measure. That night, alone in his house, Axl took out the old photo that Mr. Larkin had in his living room. The photo of Billy Bailey, the red-haired 11-year-old boy with a shy smile. After the teacher's funeral, his family had given it to him, knowing how much it would mean to him. He looked at that boy in the photograph, seeing the pain in his eyes, but also the spark of hope. "I did it, Mr. Larkin," he whispered. "I kept my promise, and I'm going to keep keeping it until the last day of my life." He hung the photo in his recording studio, right in front of the microphone where he recorded all his songs. A constant reminder of where he came from, of who had helped him get there, of the responsibility he had to carry forward with that legacy. Because in the end, that's what really matters. Not fame, not money, not awards or recognition. It's the impact you leave on the world, the lives you touch, the doors you open for others. Mr. Larkin had taught him that 45 years ago, and now Axl Rose was teaching the same thing to thousands of children around the country. The cycle continued. The promise was fulfilled again and again, and music, that magical force that unites souls and transforms lives, kept playing. In one of the last emails Maria sent to Axl, there was a simple but profound question. How do you know when you've really succeeded? Axl thought about the question for days before responding. Finally, he wrote, "You succeed when your life becomes a bridge for others to cross, when your story inspires someone else to tell theirs, when your struggles become the lessons that help another avoid the same mistakes. That's true success. Everything else is just statistics." Maria never forgot that answer. And when years later she herself became a mentor for young artists, she repeated those same words, passing the wisdom to the next generation. Mr. Larkin's legacy lived on, not just in Axl Rose, but in every life he touched, in every child who found their voice thanks to that chain of kindness that began decades ago in a classroom in Lafayette, Indiana. And so, the story of a teacher and his student became the story of thousands. One fulfilled promise transformed into thousands of new promises. One saved voice multiplied into a chorus of hope that resonated throughout the country. Because in the end, the true promise was never just about coming back and saying thank you. It was about continuing the work, about keeping the flame alive, about making sure no child with talent and dreams got lost in the darkness because no one believed in them. That promise, made by an 11-year-old boy to his music teacher, had become something much bigger. It had become a movement, a legacy, a reason to keep going even when the world felt heavy. And every time Axl Rose took the stage, every time he sang those songs that had touched millions, he carried with him the image of that teacher sitting in the front row, with tears in his eyes and pride in his heart. Because everything, absolutely everything, had begun with a man who decided to believe in a boy no one else saw. That's the magic of a true teacher. They don't just teach lessons, they change destinies. They save lives. They create legacies that transcend generations. Mr. William Larkin did all that and more. And Axl Rose made sure the world never forgot him. If this story touched your heart, leave me a comment telling me about that teacher or that person who changed your life. We all have a Mr. Larkin somewhere in our story. Let's honor them by remembering them.